Thank you for having me here today. I am a native Utahn, flew down this morning with Holly. You have a beautiful state, and it's made even more beautiful when you get to come down here and visit with your daughter, who is a second-year student at Arizona State University. Rosie, will you raise your hand there? Yeah. So when Todd called and asked if I would be interested in coming down, I would have come in a heartbeat, but it was even a quicker heartbeat because I get to have dinner with my daughter tonight, whom I haven't seen for 6 weeks or so. We in Utah and Arizona have similarities and differences. Our similarities, we have the beautiful Colorado Plateau. We're Westerners. We have that rugged Western individualism. And we're citizens of the United States. We also have differences. Utah's not a border state. That's a big difference. You're larger than we are. And your legislature and governor have taken a different approach to immigration. So I get to tell you a little bit about the development of the Utah story or the Utah Compact, and I hope it adds value to your public dialogue here. I'm an economist by training. I work as an executive vice president at the Salt Lake Chamber, and I work in public policy. I help with the public policy and communications of Utah's largest business association, which means I get to interact with a lot of senior business leaders in Utah. And after you all passed, maybe I shouldn't say you all, after your state passed what we call in Utah the enforcement-only bill, there was this overwhelming feeling among business leaders that I interact with that was the wrong approach for Utah. And as we would convene and meet and do things, we would frequently kind of shake our heads. And basically, we could feel it coming north. We could feel an enforcement-only approach coming north, and we were deeply troubled by it. And we began to talk. And first it was in perhaps the business community. And then we would talk to our partners in government, whether it be the city government, the Salt Lake PD, whatever. We talked with the interfaith community. We talked with the United Way, with think tanks in our state. And one by one, we began to realize that we had a common set of values that were not adequately articulated. And the one value that was being articulated was law enforcement, but there were other values equally important that represented our culture and our approach to a complex issue. These came to be known as the 5 principles in the Utah Compact. Free societies. The notion that we had a unique culture, history, and spirit of inclusion in Utah that we wanted to magnify. Families, that we opposed policies that unnecessarily separated families. Economy, that we acknowledged the role of immigrants in helping our economy grow and be strong. And I will say to you that right now the Utah economy is growing at 3 times the national average. Now that may not be saying that much at a time of downturn, but our job growth rate is 2.9%, and the U.S. job growth rate's been about 1%. Thank you. And then the 5th one, so free societies, law enforcement, family, economy, and the need for a federal solution. And we decided to craft a simple 250-word document that expressed our values as a community. It was a genuine, grassroots, heartfelt expression of what we value in Utah. Now, there are those who characterize it as something else, that it was, some liberal think tank in Washington, D.C. that somehow got it into Utah. That's been written, many of you may know. There are some that might say that it was just the business community trying to, secure lower wages, and a lot of other talk. But as someone who was at the center of the development, it was truly an organic expression of what we were feeling as a community. So it became a clear, concise, and positive framework for addressing a broken federal immigration system and for setting the context to prevent an Arizona-like solution or law in Utah. It had a really simple purpose. We wanted to create a civil, compassionate, and constructive dialogue to move our state to a better place. It created a context for a more balanced, a more sensible, and a more beneficial immigration legislation. Now you can go to utahcompact.com and you will see that about 3,300 people have signed on to this organic movement. They just voluntarily put their name and an affiliation and become a supporter of the Utah Compact. I will say that you'll see some Arizona State University students have signed that, and you can give this little girl over here credit for that, because perhaps Rosie helped me with that a little bit. Well, I can see on the clock here that I have a lot more time, but I'm not. Oh, and he's going to say the clock's wrong or something. Or, yeah. Oh, excellent. But I have no need other than to tell you that it was a genuine expression of our community values. And I have something I want to read to you that is perhaps the best expression of that. You know, working in the business community, a lot of press coverage about the Utah Compact. We landed a New York Times editorial on the Utah Compact without any pitching, without any trying. They just saw what we had done in Utah and praised it. The same thing happened in the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and I believe even the Arizona Republic opined favorably about the Utah Compact. You'll know that better than I. But on 11/17/2010, so November 17th of 2010, I read a letter to the editor in one of our local papers by a woman named Betty Tingey. I've never met Betty. I don't know her. She's a senior in our state. This was 6 days after the Utah Compact was signed. And I just want to read you her letter to the editor because it shows you the heartfelt feeling that generates the Utah Compact, and maybe there's something that you can learn from it. She says, "I don't know much about politics except the sick feeling I get inside when there's constant arguing. I don't know economics except I pay my bills and I keep a balanced checkbook. I don't know how to settle debates, but I know a peaceful heart when I have one. I felt it when I read the Utah Compact. I didn't feel it when I read the comments made about it." So she's reflecting on the banter and maybe the comments in the newspaper dialogue. She says, "I am a grandmother, and I know how I feel about my children and grandchildren. My forefathers came across the ocean wanting a better life for themselves and their children, which includes me. I am grateful America made room for them. We have been blessed. I feel sick inside for those in our day who have those same needs and desires for their families, but are met with such harsh and sometimes impossible opposition. Desperate searching and scratching for a better life is different from premeditation to gain riches or do evil. It can't be this difficult to distinguish between the two." You'd think this woman was an English major, she writes so well, wouldn't you? She's put up this wonderful delineation between people who rightly desire to do goodwill and people who desire to do harm. She says, she says, "Let's find a way to turn the criminals away. I am certain there is someone out there smarter than I who can find the way to accomplish this. Our peace depends upon it." This is the last paragraph. She says, "I would say to those who talk just to hear themselves make noise, hush. Hush long enough to listen and seek the peace. Forget politics and economics and just plain hard-heartedness long enough to read the Utah Compact and feel the same peace that I felt. Those who choose to balk at such a request and continue the uncomfortable debating do not want peace. They only want attention and the praise of man." Well, that is Betty Tingey, a woman that I do not know, but a woman who captures in a nugget the spirit behind the Utah Compact. Business leaders, faith leaders, community leaders, compassionate people, plain old normal citizens got together, crafted a 250-word document that is now being replicated in many states. And while it does not speak specifically to any implementation or legislation, it does set a framework for a more civil, compassionate, and constructive discussion.